Okay, Michael, the live stream has begun. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Great. Welcome everybody to tonight's May 16th, 2023 full design review board meeting. I'm going to call to order and establish a quorum. We have 6 members here tonight. So Emily jumped in here. So we have 6 tonight. Do I hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion passes. LaShonda, do we have some meeting minutes we need to approve?
Yes, April 18th, April 25th, May 2nd, and May 9th.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve April 18th, April 25th, May 2nd, and May 9th meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. I then have on my agenda design review board elections. We missed this last month because we didn't have enough people here. So we pushed it to this month. So for design review board elections, if you want to nominate somebody, make a motion to nominate somebody for chair or vice chair, and then we will need to have a second, and then we will vote on it. Does anybody have a nomination that they would like to make?
I'd like to nominate Michael Wood for chair.
There's a motion.
Seconded.
There's a second. Any further discussion on that? I would say thank you, Bruce. Be happy to keep going. So,
Great.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Now, any against? And I'll abstain. So motion that passes. Does anyone else have any other nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Michael B. for vice chair.
We have
Second.
Mike B in nomination in a second. Any discussion on that?
I appreciate the nomination. I'll be happy to continue in my role.
Okay. Let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody against? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain, Michael.
All right. Motion passes 601. Sorry for the record on my vote. I didn't say that 601 as well. Any other nominations for vice chair? I will nominate Bruce for vice chair.
Second.
There's a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain. But thank you.
Motion passes 601. Looking for any other vice chair nominations? We need one more.
I'll nominate Brian Cutler for vice chair. Sorry, Brian.
It's not a sorry, it's a good thing. There's a nomination for Brian. Is there a second?
I'll second the nomination for Brian.
There's a
Again,
second.
I feel remiss in breaking up the band, but
I know, that's, yeah.
Well, there's a motion, there's a second. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of Brian, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, motion passes 6-0-1. All right, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, so we have not Brian, Mike B, and Bruce for vice chair, and then myself for chair for this next coming year. So looking forward to it. Congrats, everybody, and let's jump into tonight's agenda. Or first, let me see if there's any members' comments that are not pertaining to any application tonight. Any general member comments? These would be for any application not on the agenda tonight. I don't see anybody raising their hand or register with staff, so I think we're good to get started. All right, so moving into tonight's agenda, we have up first, we have an appeal, application 11817 Triple Crown Road. Is the appellant here?
Yes, the appellant is here and is unmuted. Mr. Platt, you're unmuted.
Yes, I'm ready to begin when you tell me.
You're good to get started, sir.
Good to get started?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. The DRB misapplied the Reston requirements. The Berries project was approved in 2021, but the Berries built a different project and didn't tell or ask the DRB for permission until caught by a site visit in fall 2022. The pool deck now has 4-foot-high off-white stone walls and decking. This violates RA swimming pool design guidelines that limit pool height and decking to 18 inches above grade, and above 6 inches require wood decking that is left to weather naturally or be stained a muted color. Also, the deck is now almost 40% larger, and the pool is 10 to 12 feet closer to our house. This massive high structure is now about 1,260 square feet. It overwhelms and looms over the Berry's own backyard and dominates ours in the adjacent lot, violating the RA norm standards that pool and decking should relate harmoniously to the available space and should minimize its impacts on neighboring properties. The balcony screen porch is close to our bedrooms, blocks our sunlight, and creates a large obtrusive privacy and noise nuisance. There are no balcony screen porches on the Berry's model or any other single-family homes in our neighborhood. There are no accurate revised plans certified by the Berry's architect or engineer on file. The letter and drawings they submitted are incomplete and misleading. The DRB itself had difficulty deciphering and interpreting the submission and reached an incorrect result. There are also no filed plans for where the house drain pipes will direct stormwater drainage and numerous other violations as well. The DRB has discretion, but must act consistently and fairly in accordance with duly adopted and published design guidelines and process requirements, and cannot ignore or contradict them. Yet that is not what has happened here. The DRB did not enforce RA substantive and process requirements and return the deficient application to the applicant. Rather than penalizing the rule breaking, the DRB praised and approved the project and extended the completion deadline beyond the Berry's request and beyond the maximum allowed under the Reston deed. This is classic selective enforcement and willful blindness. The DRB has violated its fiduciary duty and our property rights and those of every Reston homeowner under the Reston deed and protective covenants. If this project is allowed to continue despite these violations, the DRB will be rendering RA protective covenants, design guidelines, and requirements unenforceable in the future. Many people are paying attention to this travesty to see whether the fix is in or if the DRB will do its duty fairly and without bias, preference, or prejudice. Please hear this appeal and afford us the protections we are entitled to as Reston homeowners and that you would want for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Do you have any other statements? Anybody else talking for your appeal?
That's it.
Okay, I thought I saw your lawyer listed, so I wasn't sure if they were going to be here tonight. Well, let me go around the room and see if anyone has any questions for you. Okay, and then we'll discuss.
Sure.
Elena, do you have any questions for Mr. Platt?
No. Thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions for Mr. Platt?
No.
Okay. Brian, did you have any questions for Mr. Platt?
I'm not sure if this is a question for Mr. Platt, but I guess the one thing that stands out to me is the comment that I think referring to the pool is 8 to 10 feet closer to his property than shown on the drawings. And I know we went around and around last time, but I might just need my memory refreshed on where we landed, because that's a pretty serious allegation. So I just wonder how we can verify the accuracy of that.
Mr. Cutler, would you like me to reply?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, we took the original submission that the architect, Mr. Newland, had submitted, and we measured from that where the original pool was supposed to be. And then using the scale that Mr. Newland's drawings had put in, we measured against where the pool is now located on the same scale drawing, and we found that it is 10 to 12 feet closer to our house. It is larger by 40% than what was proposed, which was about 900 square feet. This is significantly larger, and it really overwhelms the Berry's yard and our property that is very close to it. You will notice that what was submitted, stay on that picture if you would, that would be very helpful. You see where the pool, the western edge of the pool is going down to the supposedly even slope with no walls. And then you see to the right, to the left of that, where the Berry's windows are, closer to their bedroom. And the pool is now, despite what the drawings that they submitted in their revision indicate, the pool sidewall is now at the middle of the Berry's other windows. And so that's the difference. And they actually acknowledged as much in the abstruse filing that they made, where they tried to obscure all of this. But if you look, Mr. Cutler, at where the pool is actually now, you and everyone else on the DRB can see that it is by the measure, by looking simply at where the windows are on the Berry's house, and looking at the actual photographs that the Berrys submitted and that we used, you can see that it's 10 to 12 feet larger. The pool itself has been moved all the way down towards us. And basically with the 4 foot high stone walls, has become an extravagant eyesore that has no place in Reston or a residential neighborhood. Nobody that has looked at this, from our neighbors to others, has said they cannot imagine that Reston would ever permit such a travesty. I don't know if this answers your question, but those are the facts. If you look at this original one and then you look to the pictures of what actually exists now, we submitted one in one of the submissions. You can see where the pool ends, and that's what was. Go to the one before if you could.
Yes, staff, go to slide 14 and kind of zoom out from slide 14, and kind of hit zoom out so you can see slide 14 and 15 together. Because I think it kind of shows exactly what Mr. Platt's referencing here, which I think is answering Brian's question. Yeah, just like zoom, just so you can have both those pages at the same time on the same.
Yeah, you see, that's it. You got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Wood.
Yeah, so you can kind of see like where the existing wall, or I guess the newly built wall, is in the middle of those windows, which on the rendering was going to be left edge of the staircase almost. It's even past the left edge of the staircase.
Right. And what I'm struggling with is, and I'm trying to recall this conversation, is that I think that rendering unfortunately does not match the drawings, the kind of more architectural drawings.
That's correct. It does not, but the submission that Mr. Newland made clearly identified the original patio at ground level and had dimensions on it. And from those dimensions, you can readily calculate using the same thing in the scale that actually represents what this house is, the size of it. You can actually extrapolate and come up with the 10 feet closer. It's easy to do that once you look at the same apples to apples. They didn't submit it. They didn't want it submitted. Mr. Newley never submitted other architectural plans. That's why you're struggling with this, Mr. Cutler. And Mr. Adams did not correctly answer you last time because he told you we had submitted a complaint. What he didn't tell you was that the legal committee took it up because the staff validated our complaint. This is in fact 10 to 12 feet closer to us.
Yeah, because Brian, I see where the plans that were submitted. So Steph, where did it go? If you go to slide 118, it
You're
shows
struggling because
here.
they didn't submit what everybody is required to submit. There are no plans for the revision on file at the Reston Association. You still have no idea what actually they're building, and they could tell you anything because you can't rebut something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's farce.
Well, and so here, Brian, it shows, that those stairs now are much closer to those windows, but it still appears that obviously the pool deck is still, obviously still completely over, whatever, 6 feet.
Brian, Michael, if I may.
Sure, Emily.
So as we addressed during the last meeting, the actual architecturals that were submitted, the elevations and the renderings of this original plan were incorrect. There was a dimension that is basically, actually, this is a perfect spot to stop. If you see where that red box is, the brick windows between the gap rather between that section of windows and then the door and windows on the other side to the right, both of those dimensions were inaccurate on the plans. So the house on this plan was off by 8 feet, which is it was an error on the plans that were submitted. However, this was addressed during our resubmission that we just did, where we said the pool is no closer to the Platt's property than what was on the original plan.
Ms. Inglis, with all due respect, that's not accurate. Take a look at page 5 of the Berry's revised submission that with the drawing that you put together yourself.
With
and
all
you
due respect, can you
misrepresenting-
stop interrupting people? Ms. Inglis, could you please finish what you're saying? Thank you.
Thank you, Lana. So with this plan, the house drawing is actually inaccurate. Where the doors and windows were and the house in relation to the property lines was inaccurate in the elevations and the drawings. So in one drawing that was submitted, it was inaccurate, but in the Fairfax County plans that were also submitted to the DRB, those plans were correct because the plat was correct. So the engineer drawings and the architectural drawings did not line up, which we discovered when we went to do the initial construction. So in essence, the pool is no closer to the property line than it originally was, which you can see on the drawing that was submitted, with the exception of the auto cover box, which was approved, which I believe was about a 30-inch span that was approved to allow for the auto cover. However, the house and the pool in relation to the house were different than what is shown in this rendering, but that is also different than another plan that was submitted with this approval. So in essence, the two plans did not line up, the elevations, renderings, and the footprint that was submitted. So the correction of the space did not push the pool any closer to the Platt's property distance to distance. It only elongated the pool slightly to account for the mismeasurement of the doors and windows of the existing house.
May I respond to that? I didn't
Yeah.
mean to interrupt you, Ms. Inglis. Please
I'm
excuse
done.
me. But this is significant for our property value and our peace and enjoyment of our house. Take a look at page 5 of the Berry's revised submission with a drawing that your firm submitted in support of the project. Drawing that was submitted by Mr. and Mrs. Berry on their revised submission.
Is it the one with the pink and green?
Yes,
Mr. Platt?
take a look at
Yes,
that. Okay.
staff slide 43. Yeah.
Do you see where the pool is shown on that, and that it's a narrow difference in the location of the pool? Not much, but in fact, that representation misrepresents the entire pool situation, which the entire pool deck moves significantly to the right of the stairs. And what Ms. Inglis told you is not consistent with what this drawing shows. And this drawing was submitted in a way that defies explanation, other than the fact that they're only showing a little bit of movement, and that's what the text associated with it says. That's a crock. That's not accurate or reasonable to assume. And that was one of the reasons, Mr. Wood, why you were unable to come to a definitive conclusion. The bottom line of this whole circus is that they have never submitted a plan for revision, because they know if they had submitted what they've actually now built, you would never have approved it, because 4-foot-high stone walls and decking with a 1,260-foot deck surface would never be approved by the DRB under any circumstances. It's outside anybody's reference point, and it's clearly not contemplated on design guidelines or protective covenants. That's why we're upset, and I'm sorry, Ms. Inglis, for interrupting you before. I didn't mean to do that.
Can we get to the issue of whether we have an appeal that's hearable?
Yeah, well, that's what I was just about to say, Bruce. So, what did we misapply a guideline? Do we have new information based on the appellant's case here? And so, does anybody have? I mean, Bruce, do you feel that a guideline or anything was misapplied?
Well, my notion was we did discuss this drawing, and this was the basis of the approval. My understanding was that what we were really dealing with was the 30 inches, which was explained and was approved at the time. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what we're seeing here, but I understood that this drawing, which was part of the package and was the subject of our discussion, is accurate. If it's inaccurate, if that's the new fact.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm struggling, is like, how accurate is this drawing, since it's not a certified plat by a surveyor or by an engineer or by an architect. It's just a PDF that's done with some dimensions. I don't know how accurate the actual conditions are, so I'm confused. That we didn't request maybe a more updated drawing that would actually show the actual dimensions, which this shows, but it's very obviously rudimentary. In reality, it's much different than what a real site plan would look like. So I could see where it's tough to make a decision, because there's like the landscaping plan, and maybe Emily, you can point me in the right direction, but I don't see like a drawing where it was actually done by the either engineer of record or the surveyor or somebody showing exactly where this is.
So the landscaping plan is an as-built drawing of the site conditions, which is reflected here in the pink layout.
So that's slide 46. Staff, go to slide 46 real quick. This is what you're saying?
Correct. So the planting plan, which I do believe has dimensions on it as well, is an updated as-built drawing no, this plan may not have dimensions. The grading and drainage plan may, but this is an as-built drawing that matches the pink layout that was submitted. One of the reasons that the multiple color drawing was submitted was to clarify and show that the difference between the architectural plan, the grading plan, and the as-built drawings, which are all slightly different, but the slightly difference from those does not increase the footprint of the pool or the retaining wall in location to the Platt's yard.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what we're trying to. I don't think we're discussing that portion. I think we're just really discussing to make sure that we have proper documentation so staff can verify what needs to be built in the application. Is, you know, because the claim from the appellant is that, you know, the application is incomplete, which I'm honestly I'm agreeing with, because I'm seeing no, like, if this landscape plan is accurate, right, that we're looking at, all this needs really is some dimensions and showing, you know, what the final size is, where it is, and then, you know, in this instance, it's submitting it as an as-built for an existing condition.
I do believe there is a plan with dimensional drawings that was submitted with the last revision.
I just don't see anything except that little sketch that we were just looking at that doesn't really, I don't know how accurate that is. So that's where I could see the argument for an incomplete application, but that's just one opinion. Bruce, is that kind of what you were?
Right, because my
alluding to?
recollection was that between these drawings and the, I'll call the multicolored drawing, we understood, at least at that point, the relative location of the pool. And with respect to Mr. Platt's property.
Yeah, because even if you look at in the newer submission, if you go to slide 47, staff just come down here, you know, this still shows the pool farther away from the corner edge of the retaining walls, which if you go back to the slide right above, the pool is actually closer to those retaining walls. So I don't know if I noticed that this portion of the application isn't fully completed, kind of from an accuracy standpoint.
Mr. Wood, may I add something on this
Sure.
very point? If you look at the drawing that Ms. English just asserted was accurate, and you look at what we were talking about before, the stairs are in the middle of the far western windows, but in fact, that's not accurate. The pool deck extends into that space. This drawing is also wrong and misleading and inaccurate. The pea gravel deck is much smaller than indicated even on this drawing, as you can see with your own eyes, because the pool is actually much further into the middle of the windows and the stairs are over further. This drawing is also inaccurate and not reflective of the 10 to 12 feet closer. So, you know, if I get a little exercise, I apologize, but you're dealing with single family custom homes, and it's not a trivial matter to have our backyard and property destroyed.
Okay.
No plan submitted that you all would never approve this with high walls with stone 4 feet high next to you. None of you would want that near you. There's nothing like that in Reston.
Does anyone else have any
plans in?
Okay, hold on. Anyone else on the board have some thoughts?
Well, being a person who lives in a cluster with 6 or 7 foot high stone walls, I'm not sure. I am sure that I don't agree that it would never be approved with the height of wall.
Yeah, I think that's not the argument. I think the argument is that there's a, you know,
I understand.
Yeah, that
understand.
there's not a complete, concise application that's, I mean, even, there's
Granted.
all,
I'm just,
all us
um,
professionals on the board, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly where
mhm.
and what exactly is being built, which I think ultimately is the problem that I have with it.
Mhm.
Well, let me ask a question to, out of fairness to everybody, if the information was not as clear as at least I understood it to be, if we voted to grant the appeal, it seems to me we're going to have the same discussion we just had.
Mhm. That's where I was going.
So my notion is this, and this is really a question to, because I don't know how this would go, but in the interest of fairness to everybody and the fact that we could have the same discussion, but we won't know the facts. If we granted the appeal, could we then also move to defer until and request that we get a up-to-date set of drawings so we can decide de novo with the accurate facts, or else we'll have the same discussion over and over again.
No, I completely agree. I think that's, we could motion to defer with a recommendation, exactly to what you're saying, right? And I think the drawings exist, they just don't have the proper dimensions on them, and I think that's ultimately what we're going to need.
Just to add, even if the appeal is accepted, that gives the applicant the opportunity to respond to the affected party as well. So we want to make sure that we take that into consideration.
Yeah, but if we accept the appeal and then we just make a motion to defer, what do you mean on the affected party?
For the applicants, I apologize, to give the applicants to respond to the affected parties' statements. We did get a point of clarification from Emily, which was a part of the application. But we want to make sure that we give the applicants the opportunity to respond.
Well, an applicant doesn't respond during an appeal.
So if the appeal is accepted.
Right.
We wanted to give them the opportunity to.
Well, I guess Bruce's point is that if we do accept the appeal, then there's really no point to have discussion on the matter because we clearly don't have the facts that we need. So I guess we could hear from them again and sit here for another 20 minutes and then tell them to defer. That's ultimately why that's all we were saying. But if protocol says we need to hear the application over, we can.
Excuse me, my observation is the reason for granting the appeal is we don't have the information. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have a discussion where we already concluded we don't have the facts.
Yeah.
Understood. But the process goes, the applicant has received the affected party, and if the appeal is accepted, they do have the opportunity to speak if the appeal is accepted.
Meaning the applicant.
That is correct.
Well, then they're just presenting over again. The application now, if the appeal is accepted, we're now hearing a de novo, and it's just back before us again. So then we can,
and we're going to tell them we don't have enough facts.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I understand.
Anyways, we'll deal with it.
Okay.
So, is there a motion? Is there any other further discussion on it?
Just for clarity here, again, we're talking about dimensioning of an already existing as-built drawing, correct? That is the nature of this discussion?
Well, I think the appeal is the fact that it's an incomplete application. That's the misapplied or new information to accept the appeal. But ultimately, yes, it's then could turn into the fact that we need more dimensions of what is existing, correct? To then determine if it is okay.
Question for you, Michael. Does the fact that it's a plan that is to scale with at least dimension and a scale bar already listed not qualify it as in terms of dimensions drawings? is a fully dimensioned drawing part of a normal approval for a submittal of a drawing, or is it just necessary that a plan be to scale?
I think dimensions to property lines is very important because those would be what would be critical in an application. So that's typically what I would want to see because, unfortunately, we're in a digital world these days. I can't pull out my scale and stick it on my computer and do a scaling effort right now. I could throw this into Bluebeam and try to, set up the scale and do all that, but we're not set up to do that. So I would say yes, that, a submission needs full dimensions to be an adequate, complete submission. And I think that's the reason why, I'm going to make a motion to grant the appeal on the notion that the application is incomplete and needs further information to be ruled upon. So there's a motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? And I know, just a reminder, Emily, I know you need to recuse yourself from voting.
Correct.
All right, so I'm going to take a roll call vote. Elena, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
All right, Jim?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Mike B? Mike B? He's muted. All right.
Yes, there we go. All right, I'm free. So
yes.
And
Bruce.
I was going to say, I got dumped out, Michael. Can you repeat the motion again? I came back in to hear you guys taking roll call. So.
Gotcha. It was just a motion to accept the appeal on basis that the application is incomplete and that additional information is needed to make a ruling.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I heard the motion right. So you made the motion. It was seconded. I heard folks going through. So I'm going to vote against, Michael.
Against. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Bruce.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll vote yes. And then Emily, you're abstaining. So the motion passes 5-1-1. So the appeal passes. So we'll hear the application de novo. Like discussion before, is the applicant here and would like to
Yes,
speak real quick?
yes, the applicant is here and would like to speak. I'm unmuting them now.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate your time, but the basis of the ruling is not in the DRB regulations. The information was before this board previously, the same information. It was reviewed and approved, and there's nothing new. One point I'd like to make out to the board is that Mr. Platt does whatever he can in his power to fight us on every single thing that we've ever done in our house. And it is frustrating to the point where I've considered a public tort nuisance suit against him because this is just out of control. I mean, you have all reviewed the project. It was voted unanimously. If there was a problem with the project before, then it should have been denied. An appeal is on something new or misapplied guideline. This is neither. I will tell you this, the appeal was filed because almost verbatim based upon his lawyer's letter that was previously submitted to y'all. And Richard Newland, who was not here, who could have probably helped with respect to some of the questions, is not here, but it gets so frustrating. I mean, you cannot imagine how frustrating it is when Mr. Platt comes in. He can't see our project. He comes with a camera. He goes between the trees to try and get a view and take a photo, either from a high angle or from, crossing across the swale and trying to show that somehow that the pool is obstructive or different. I mean, if you were to look through this 251 page record, you would see how many things have been approved. I mean, he appealed, look at this, he appealed the deck. It was approved in 2021. He waived his appeal after that. Now he brings it up again. It's like we're stuck in this eternal bureaucracy, and it's very frustrating. And I'm not getting mad at any one individual. It's just, this is set up entirely, I think, to try and placate Mr. Platt when he gets angry, and he calls all the time. And it's very frustrating for us because, for example, he said the neighbors don't like it. He mentions no neighbors. Well, I'll mention the neighbors that have complimented us. The Gablers on Triple Crown, the McGurks on Triple Crown, the Collins, the Lowens, the O'Shields, the Blacks.
Everybody around us.
Everyone around us. The only one who doesn't like it is Mr. Platt, and he didn't like a lot of everything we've ever done in our house, including planting a tree. And also, with respect to the Platt's appeal, it mirrors the letter that was previously before you, the March 13th letter. It's almost verbatim, with the exception of the fact he accuses me of defamation. So, I mean, rehearing this de novo, I mean, it's not the right thing to do. I mean, you made your decision, and I understand that, but our project is built practically, and it was approved. We're finishing some of the steps. It is here, and we have had Kane do everything in our power to block Kane Landscapes to block the view. We planted 6 major trees, 7 to 8 feet. We planted another 5 trees, 5 to 6 feet, all just on the Platt side, because we're trying to. I mean, if we could have a tarp, if that was approvable, I would do it, because I absolutely don't want him to see our house, our background, or anything, because he's always observing and filing complaints against us. And it's just really unfair that the board approves our project with the same information and then says, oh, no, that is completely unfair. And I mean, I could go on, but yes.
So with regard to measurements, and you suggesting that you don't have what you need, I will tell you that everything has been, as you see, within the same footprint. And you've been able to speak to our architect. You've been able to speak to Emily Inglis. This was both, when we had this second approval, when we had the updates and discussed what had happened and the reasons for the slight shift. There is no 8 to 10 foot shift towards their house. That's not even possible. We explained to you how the house measurements, or Emily did, how the house measurements weren't entirely accurate. And so maybe what we could do right now is have Richard speak, and if Emily wants to add to that. I propose that you've had the measurements. You had them on, the best that we had on day one, they were inaccurate and we didn't know it, but we learned that during construction. So during the updates, we explained how. You visited the site twice. We have had RA people visit twice, or maybe more. I'm not sure.
They've measured.
So the basis of appeal has not been met. You've had everything, and their arguments on appeal are the same exact arguments they've been making time and time again. This is an abuse of the process, and you're allowing them to abuse it, and it's become harassment essentially at this point. I think the only reason we're even able to stay where we are is because we're lawyers. Otherwise, I don't know anybody in their right mind who would ever even try to fight this hard. I'm at the end at this point, because it is seriously harassment. Serious. Okay, Richard, are you there? Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I agree with the Berries that this, after being on the DRB for 21 years, I have never seen such a misuse of the process that's been going on here. And I hope you all realize this. And I know some of you new members, this is all new to you, I guess. And some of you guys haven't been there that long. This started back in June of 2021. Okay, that's 2 years ago. It was all approved then. Exactly. The footprint has not changed since that time. I think there were 4 or 5 appeals from the neighbor, from the Platts. everything from drainage to, I can't even begin to remember. They complimented the architectural design, which I appreciate. But anything that they could find, they kept coming back to you guys time and time and time again. And I kind of lost track. The Berries may remember how many times they've appealed this project. Back in, and so we, with your initial approval, there were some things there that were important to bring out again. And you guys have all heard this, or most of you have. The original approval 2 years ago now, this has cost not only time, but a lot of money for the Berries because of this constant harassing appeals from the neighbor next door. The original proposal that was then designed, and I apologize if there were some incorrect or not correct dimensions here and there, but the footprint that was designed then and the approval that came with it was it could indeed be enlarged if they decided to add a pool cover, and it could be enlarged as much as 3 feet. The pool also was discussed, and I believe my memory is still okay, is the pool could be either a 26-foot pool or a 29-foot pool. They've ended up with a 26-foot pool. The extension to the right, as that little hand is dancing around there, was because that's the end of the pool that they put the cover in. So that was all approved 2 years ago, exactly where it was going to end up. The one thing we came to you back in March was for different reasons, economic reasons, structural reasons, a whole bunch of other things. The pool had to shift. It originally was, I think it was 4 or 5 feet off the rear line. For structural reasons and other reasons, we had to shift it back to that wall in the exact same location. That wall has not moved. The same size pool, it just shifted over. That's what you approved last time. That and everything else that you see there, that's all exactly what got approved. The Berries have continued on since then. They've been trying to build this thing. It took a while to get it through Fairfax County, as you all may understand. Permits, and you had to get a pool permit, the building permit, and everything else. But this just getting ridiculous. You know, the drawing that Emily did that showed you with the green and blue and pink lines was actually accurate, and that was what based your approval last time. I mean, that shows you, you can see the blue lines versus the pink lines versus the green lines. The green lines show on that one where the pool was originally approved. It got shifted over to the corner, and that's the pink lines that are closer to the corner, or the rear wall, I should say. That's what got approved. The footprint didn't change. It did move 30 inches or 36 inches to the right to allow the cover to be put in there. That was approved 2 years ago. So they didn't feel they had to come, the Berries didn't feel like they had to come back for another approval for that, but they did come back, went through all this again back in March. You questioned everything there, all of this. There was nothing like, is that accurate or isn't it accurate? Or these the right dimensions? Those were actual in the field dimensions by Emily and her firm to clarify exactly where everything was.
And Richard, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is the perfect moment to point out that the dimensions that the DRB is requesting, if you zoom in, are in red on this plan. They are the dimensions that the DRB is requesting are actually on this plan in red.
Oh, there you go.
And that was noted at that meeting too.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, Richard, please
So,
continue. I just wanted to.
I think
that
all
out.
all the dimensions you guys are asking for were actually there at that last presentation. And that, you know, so again, what's that, 3-4 months ago, they got another approval against the plats, lawyers' letters, that it went on and on and on. I mean, it's gotten to the point of being ridiculous. I think a painter washed his brushes somewhere, and the plats are now claiming that they've destroyed the drain next door to the house because someone washed a paintbrush. Well, that's a construction issue. That's not a DRB issue. But this is what you approved, and I'm glad Emily pointed out, all the dimensions you just asked for are all there. Distance to the property line up the top right corner of what you're looking at, 29'6" to the property line. The corner of the patio, they changed the patio from a stone patio to a gravel patio because they thought it was a kinder thing for for the environment and for everything else. And there's dimension there, what is it, 15 something? I mean, all these dimensions were there. Everything got approved again 2 years later, after much cost. Everything, it's just gotten ridiculous. And when I was on the board, well, we won't go into that. I'm too old to go into all of that right now, I'll tell you. But you have and had.
But Richard, I think the issue is that the project overall, trust me, I don't want to go around in a circus, round and round and round. Okay. I think ultimately though, the last submission did not have these dimensions. Are not, how do I know these are all accurate? They're on a drawn with Adobe Acrobat. They're not, how do I know if they're drawn to scale? How do I know exactly what is being built?
Those are all field dimensions that were taken in the field by the landscape company.
So if that's accurate, right? So this is saying the pool deck is 38 feet. What we approved was 31
36.
foot full. No, it's 36 plus another 2 feet. And that's where it's getting confusing. And then, well, how wide is the patio to the right of that? All we're asking for, it's the project, I don't believe it is egregious from a design standpoint. I think it's aesthetically pleasing to the house. It works with the architecture. I think ultimately the last approval just needs further dimensions. So staff, if you go to slide 124 for the previous application, and you slide down, this shows all of the dimensions that we approved, that we knew how wide the pool was. We knew what buffer was around the pool. We knew how far it went out. We knew how wide the pool deck was. We knew where the stairs were. We knew all the widths and dimensions of all these things that are coming up in question. And I think when it was revised in March of 23, it didn't have all of these dimensions to the fullest extent that is understandable for a complete application. And that was ultimately why we accepted the appeal. So on this application that we approved, the pool deck was 31 feet 4 inches wide.
Right.
And now it looks like it's gone up to about 38 feet. I'm not saying it's an issue. I'm just saying it needs to be documented so we can make sure that the application is being built per what we have approved. Clearly, there are lots of eyes on the project. So we want to make sure that everything is being built, and obviously it already is built. So all you have to do is to mention exactly what's out there, and it be on a certified plat, by a surveyor, by an architect, by an engineer, whatever it is, that it's on a full dimensional drawing with the property lines and is officially something you can build from.
Yeah,
it makes it a lot easier to understand.
I understand what you're saying, but at some point, even if they do that, I'm sure we're going to get another appeal from the neighbor, and it's just going to go on and on and on. And that's what I'm talking about.
That's not a DRB process. That's not our fault, though.
I'm not blaming you guys for it.
Yeah,
no,
I can't do anything about it. So all you guys can do is have a complete application. And trust me, I don't want to waste an hour of my time. I have a family. I don't want to spend 4 hours on these meetings. I hate having to deal with this.
Okay. I think just to go back to the thing at the last meeting back in March, you were presented with a drawing that had all the infield dimensions on it. I'm not sure what else we can do if we have to go now hire a surveyor to come back and verify those because you're not accepting the fact that Emily's.
Well, I think. Yeah,
hold on, Mike. Just hold on. If you're not accepting Emily's drawing with all the dimensions from in the field, then we have to go now hire a surveyor to go out and do the same thing again, just to placate this. That's getting silly.
Can I make a suggestion?
Expensive.
Can I make a suggestion? Could we go to the landscape plan?
The thing is, you guys should have had to submit.
Could we just go to that landscape plan?
It was approved.
I don't remember what number it is. It takes me too long to. It is slide
40,
number
45, I think 46. One of those.
Yeah.
Go up one more step.
Yeah, up one more. Perfect. Can the DRB accept? I would accept. I'm suggesting that we accept dimensions on this drawing. I'm assuming it's a 2-scale drawing because Emily said it was 2-scale. So if we had dimensions on this drawing that we can compare to what was originally approved, and we can look at if we accept the changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm asking for is we need to know what is out there being built. And I think based on the one sketch that we have is just not enough information. If someone came to us with a brand new application and they showed us that drawing, I would be like, well, you know, how do I believe what I'm looking at when I don't know what scale it's drawn at, what anything? So this drawing though is at
But it
scale.
was
So
accepted.
these
It
have
was
the dimensions.
accepted. It
So
wasn't
I voted to accept the appeal begrudgingly, only because this plan that had the most clear representation of what I understood that we approved did not have dimensions on it. And I heard and could understand the argument that we needed something a little more concrete. We did go back and forth between this drawing and the Adobe drawing with the, you know, with the dimensions on it. And it seems to me that if those dimensions or the accurate dimensions were overlaid on this drawing, that the DRB would have enough information to make a final decision. So I'm just making that a suggestion to the other DRP members.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good plan where the question came from for me was just struggling to understand how all the drawings match. Because I think this drawing, if you compare this drawing to the best image I can find is slide 15, which looks like an in progress construction photo showing where I'm assuming that's the edge of the pool deck is kind of midway in that window that we're looking beyond. But the plans that we were just looking at on 46, for example, show the set of stairs next to it there. So I just wanted clarification because we got a claim that it was 8 to 10 feet moved, but I'm hearing that no, it was really just 30 inches, 3 feet. So all I wanted was some clarification to understand what's accurate. Because I think so if you go back to 46 and that plan, it looks like to me at least, unless I'm misreading it, of course, that those stairs next to the pool deck are meant to be aligned with the center line of that window. So when I compare those two images together, it does look like something has shifted. Now it may be minor, and that's what I wanted clarification on. That's all I wanted clarification on.
And I think that, yeah, we would want the windows indicated in plan in the correct location, because I think what I understood and what we heard was that the plans, the building plan didn't have the windows properly located, which I think is causing confusion.
Yes, that's it. The windows are not properly located. That's it.
And I think ultimately that's all that's causing the cause for the incomplete application is all we're saying is I think overall the aesthetic of the pool, from a guideline standpoint, I don't think any of the other portions of the appeal apply. It's strictly the fact that there's a lot, you know, there's obviously a disgruntled neighbor in the application. We want to make sure that you guys have all the proper dimensions and ability to build this thing. And like we said, it's basically already there, right? So you guys can take dimensions either whether you use a surveyor or you use a landscape architect, whoever uses a licensed professional that can put their stamp on it that says this is where it's located. I think for your benefit and for our benefit, it would be helpful to know exactly where this thing ended up.
Okay, I just want to point out that if it's just the windows that are not accurate, especially the living room window that you see over the steps, the length of the house is accurate. So if it's just about the window placement and you're seeing it skewed, the measurement of the house in relation to that backyard is accurate. It is really just that window by the steps that's slightly to the left instead of to the right. You know, anyway,
That's what I understood. And
yeah.
I don't mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do think that it's important to get the windows in the right place just because of the pictures and everything and the confusion.
Yeah, I just hate to have to pay money for a survey or something that's even more exorbitant to appease the plats when we're just talking about a window placement.
I mean, I appreciate everyone's, and you can tell we're a little bit beyond. So I apologize. It's not meant towards any one of you. the plats have cost us probably over $100,000 in their appeals with the construction delays and the COVID information and these continuing appeals. I want to put Mr. Platt on notice that I'm considering a nuisance suit against him if he continues this
It's
activity.
harassment.
Because it's just, you can't just keep appealing and appealing and appealing. And if you don't like it, get a lawyer and appeal. And, you know, he files it against all of our neighbors. Like I said, he accused me of defamation. Well, does he want a lineup of all the neighbors in my neighborhood that he's filed complaints against? Because that's what he does. And it's sad. And I wish we could have a good relationship with him. But every time I try it, every time I just want to have a decent relationship with a neighbor, I get a complaint and I just can't. And he uses the process, and that's our frustration.
He's abusing it. He's abusing it. All right.
Understood. So I want to make a motion to defer the decision to give the applicants time to modify an existing drawing to show the accurate location of the windows in relationship to the exterior work, so that we can better understand the pictures and dimensions that show the size and the distance, the size of the work and the distance to the property line. That should, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I don't know if this is appropriate in a motion, but the thinking is that that's a minimal amount of work for a professional to do and then certify the information as accurate compared to hiring a new professional.
I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Abstentions?
Aye.
I'll abstain as well.
Okay, so 4-0, motion passes 4-0-2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh wait, hold on, I'm missing one. Bruce, did you vote?
I did. I voted for the motion.
Okay, all right. So motion passes 5-0-2. All right, we'll see you guys next month.
When? Because we're on vacation.
Do we know when the next meeting is?
The next DRB meeting is June the 20th, June 20th.
We're picking up our daughter in Spain that week. Could it
It'll have to be July.
July? Would that be acceptable?
It is. I think we could, if we get that drawing, I think we'll be okay to approve it or, review it with that information to then look at it. So it's ultimately up to you. But up to you guys. But yeah, you guys could push it if you needed to.
But we could submit it early as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't here, I think as long as you have, just somebody representing you, it would be okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Application H 1591 Regatta Lane.
All right. This is an appeal, and we have Laura. Laura, I'm sorry, it's going to be Linda. Linda, you are unmuted.
Hi, Linda.
Hello, Linda, can you hear me?
Give me 1 second here.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, we can hear you now. So you're appealing a decision we had, so as the affected party, so you need to approve that a guideline was misapplied, or that there's new information that wasn't available to us during the review of the application. So take it away.
All right, well, I prepared something to say, and then I will flesh out the things that you want me to do. I'm coming in later than this was originally done. And so I'm trying to catch up with everything. So. What I prepared to say probably isn't exactly tailored to what you've just said. So I may be challenged to do exactly what you've requested. So I will read to you what I wrote, and then we can take it from there. I'm Linda Holkauer, president of the Newport Cluster Board. I have lived in Reston for 27 years on each side of the toll road. I own several real estate properties here. A few weeks ago, our appeal hearing was bumped from the docket, and I got a chance to hear another case, which was an appeal on a string lighting decision. A resident was appealing the approval of a neighbor's string lights that impacted his rights with bright light shining into his bedroom window. The board deliberated, and rather than finding that the string lights, which were decorative and non-essential, should be removed, they allowed the offending neighbor to provisionally keep them because decorative lights are popular, but suggested that the aggrieved resident should get thicker blinds. Then there is the crazy history on Regatta Lane of our cluster board struggle to uphold the lighting guidelines on 1591, which directly clashed with the decision by the DRB to allow Mr. Strain to have 10 additional lights on his property. These two incidents illustrate a Reston that doesn't jive with the Reston that I know. I fear that Reston seems to have somehow veered from the original purpose of the Reston deed and mission statement, which the DRB is legally and morally bound to follow. To me, it is common sense that a resident's privacy and right to expect protection from outside nuisances should trump another's desire to have decorative, non-essential lights. This is integral to the Reston deed's overall message. In meetings last month, I was surprised to learn from Covenant advisors that the 6 lights enumerated in the guidelines are interpreted as merely a suggestion. In essence, just a jumping off point for residents who want more lights. You cannot put a chainsaw to any Reston tree before a rigorous list of demands are met, but apparently it is okay to fill out an application and put a loosely strung list of desires to substantiate those changes and get approval despite the legitimate concerns of your boots on the ground cluster board's objections. We strongly believe that Mr. Strain, having these lights approved, will alter the appearance of our cluster and is at counter purposes with the aim of the DRB's tightly crafted oversight throughout our neighborhood and could potentially create fiduciary, legal, and ethical repercussions for our cluster board, as well as negatively affecting property values and creating disruption in the coexisting harmony between neighbors. We believe by extension, it is also the DRB's mandate to follow the guidelines as well as the standards unless the situation truly calls for increased lighting. The NCA board is committed to upholding the Reston's bylaws we all signed on to when we bought into Reston. That means buying into the restrictions as well. It appears that Mr. Strain signed on to those bylaws, but in my opinion, has been cherry picking the ones he chooses to follow. There is a long history of his lighting non-compliance prior to the cluster board's attempt to bring all of our houses into compliance. He recently boasted in a cluster-wide email that he has had 20 mushroom lights for 6 years and an additional 40 string lights for 4 of those 6 years. We know that he was aware of being in violation during his abbreviated tenure as NCA president, and he recommended that a new resident follow his example and wait until he moved to remove the non-compliant lighting when RA came to inspect his property. He only applied for approval several months ago when the board requested that all NCA members come into compliance or put in an application for a variance. Initially, when we tried to bring him into compliance, rather than correcting the violation, he challenged us with the possibility of litigation for selective enforcement, thereby trying to thwart the board from carrying out its duties. He also knowingly has done numerous unapproved plantings and installed a mechanical pump on the cluster common area behind his house. It seems to point to a general disregard to upholding the bylaws in our community. In order for additional lights to be approved, there should be a compelling reason, one that is essential. Mr. Strain's application shows nothing compelling, and the few items that might appear so seem to be somewhat manipulated or fictionalized. We are a small cluster. We are aware of our residents' physical limitations or special needs. The Strain property occupies a spot that may be seen coming and going to and from the cluster. As stated in our appeal, the porch and front door lighting is quite sufficient to navigate his property, but may not be so great to highlight his landscaping, which is listed as one of the reasons he included in his lighting application. Strain suggests that his house is positioned in a way that those lights do not disturb his neighbors, and we question that, but even if that were so, it still creates a house that unnecessarily sets itself apart from the others in a dramatic way, especially to everyone entering or exiting the cluster. Before the DRB decides this appeal, I request that they schedule a site visit to our cluster and to Mr. Strain's property, and then ask themselves, as in their very powerful role as shapers, not only of our landscape, but as stewards of one of the very premises of the Reston deed, whether 1591 Regatta Lane has any bona fide reason for additional lights, with the knowledge that that would set a new precedence for our cluster that many would seek to follow, further undermining Reston's mission of protecting the night sky as well as our aesthetic continuity and continuing mission to cultivate harmony between neighbors. The diminution of Reston's mission happens through seemingly small changes to the norms. Whether they are guidelines or standards, they were set at a certain number for a reason. I understand that you are volunteers and that you are sincerely trying to serve Reston well. Please help our board and all the other cluster boards to keep Reston, to be standard bearers of the Reston deed, which requires you to, quote, interpret, administer, and enforce the protective covenants and restrictions of this deed in such a manner as to conserve, protect, and enhance the value of all real estate property subject to the deed, to promote peace, health, comfort, safety, and general welfare of the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. What we'll do now is we'll go around the room and see if anyone has any questions for you, okay? And then we'll go from there. Just as a reminder, I have on the panel who made this decision was Elena, Brian, and Mike B. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Correct.
Right. So just so you guys know, on the appeal, you guys cannot vote, but you guys can be part of the discussion, so we can ask you guys questions if we feel like a guideline was misapplied or if there's any new information. Okay. Does anybody, Jim, did you have any questions for the appellant?
No, I don't.
Okay. Bruce, do you have any questions for the appellant?
I was trying to get clarification whether the basis of appeal is that the appellant believes that the limit is 6 lights in the guidelines. Is that the basis? I'm just trying to make sure.
Yes,
is that the misapplication?
the guidelines are, I know their guidelines are 6 lights and sometimes 8 lights in independent neighborhoods that are not clusters. My objection is that I feel that there were, first of all, the lights that he had on after the approval. I took a photo of them and they were very bright and dominant. And I see that you in the past have disregarded the things that we felt were very important for our cluster. I am here, this is not personal, I am the president of the board, and we feel we have a duty to protect our cluster. We have an invested duty. And so I don't think that any of the things that he wrote in there are legitimate mandatory reasons to have lights. A lot of things are like, for instance, he says that, he and Jan are old and, it's hard for them to get around in the dark and things like that. And actually they're both very vital. And if you saw his property, it's actually very small and it's very open to everyone that's coming in and going out. The photos that he took some of them are misleading and some of them aren't. Therefore, I ask you to come and look at the property before you make a decision, and you can see for yourself.
Just for clarification, if you're not speaking to the number of lights, are you concerned that the number that is there results in glare and excessive light levels when viewed from the street, neighboring
yes.
properties? Okay, thank you.
From the street. So they are right on the corner of when you're going out. And when you come in, it's very obvious that this is the one house that is ablaze. None of the other houses in the cluster have any extra lights. They have the mushroom lights. And so that house stands out like, a sore thumb. And when you're going in and you're coming out, that's what people see.
Thank you.
And it doesn't align with the other requirements that you guys make, that everything is extremely uniform in our cluster.
Yep. Emily, do you
So
have
the
any
lighting should be also.
Emily, do you have any questions for Linda?
I don't have any questions for Linda, no.
Okay. So I just want to, one question for you, Linda. Do you guys have a cluster? Like one thing that wasn't in our application, do you guys have a cluster guideline that limits any sort of lighting or any sort of lighting?
No, because we default to the Reston Association, which I believe so many other clusters in Reston do.
Sorry, say that again.
We don't have our own cluster guideline. We default to the Reston Association guidelines. As many.
You guys have guidelines for other stuff, for like doors and siding and colors and.
We have standards for them, yes.
Yeah, okay. But for this general stuff, you guys defer to our general cluster guidelines.
Right, because when we came to Reston and other people who feel similar to me, that when you come to Reston, it's understood that there are lighting limits and there are guidelines that are there for a purpose. So when we reached out to everybody in the cluster and we said, you need to come into compliance or apply for a variance, everybody else, except maybe one house, complied, except for Ian. And then we were going to serve him, not serve him, but we sent him something. And then he said, oh, well, you shouldn't do that because, this is selective enforcement, rather than just complying and then put the application in. It took a long time to do that.
Yep,
so
understood. I don't think anyone's arguing with that. So just
okay.
let me just continue so we can get to whether we accept the appeal. So let me ask the board members that were a part of it. So Elena, Brian, or Mike B, were you guys considering these as something that was beyond? I mean, obviously they're beyond the landscape or beyond our 6 maximum per property for the mushroom style lights. Were you guys like assuming this was under a different standard, or what was your thought process behind it?
So if I may jump in, so we looked at the 16, these solar lights specifically. Those were the specific lights in the approval, not string lights that are hung on the lattice, to make the clarification for what Linda was saying. That was
I wasn't
not
talking
part of-
about the string lights. I was only talking about the mushroom lights.
Okay, I thought you were saying that the string lights hung from
No,
glass were
I-
adding to the glare and kind of brightness you were getting from
No,
the.
I mean, they were there, and I know there's no standard in Reston for string lights, and there's no standard in our cluster yet. But I use that example in the beginning because I see that if we start allowing a lot more lights in our cluster, there's going to be a lot of disharmony with neighbors because there's going to be a lot of shining into windows and things like that. And also, I predict it's going to create a problem. And it's not essential. I understand if people need them. His lights are not essential at all. I mean, whatever reasons he said, they are not essential. They're more like, we like to go in the back and see, and drink tea or something.
Understood. Hold on. So Brian, were you guys considering this anything else during under the guidelines? Like you guys reviewed these as something else, or I guess where was your guys' thought process there?
So if I may, Brian, we discussed the location of the lights and limiting the locations to areas where they were not visible. And that I believe, and I've got to look back at, I've got it open, but the final decision was that first of all, the lights were moved often depending on the season, because they're solar, to because it was needed in different areas, and that we would limit 6 in the public viewable area in the front yard, and that additional lights to a maximum of 16 would have to be distributed throughout the site in areas not quite as prominent.
We made specific note to evenly distribute the remaining lights around his property. I mean, point being, there
But
was no
why does he need 16 lights in that property? I mean, it's a very small footprint.
I mean, my counter question to that is, why do you not have a cluster standard dictating these, dictating some manner of guidance for the folks in your cluster with regard to?
I'll tell you why, because we have always presumed that you guys are going to hold the line at what Reston Association has said.
And,
we had no idea
and you
that
all deferred to the DRB to enter into this discussion and render an opinion on the matter, which we did. So again, if there's something you all as a cluster would like to put in place, I would encourage you all to get with your folks and get something on paper.
Also, Mike B, I think when we were reviewing it, we were looking at solar lights that we are very low. We assumed were very not powerful in any way because they are small, they are low to ground, they are solar based. And so we said 16, again, like as you point out, to be evenly distributed across the site, not like sort of how this diagram up on the page shows, that go all the way around the property and not concentrated in one location.
That's not how they are. I have a photo of his front yard. I just happened to be walking out. I wasn't looking, but I was like, whoa. And so I took a photograph of it right after you approved it. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. They were on full flare. I don't know whether you said to him that he needed to be having, that's not the way it looks. I'm telling you. Okay.
Well, some of those do not appear to be solar lights.
So I guess just from my standpoint, I think the guideline was misapplied. I don't think that there should be this many mushroom style lights on the property based on our guidelines. It also seems like it is causing a glare to neighboring properties or streets, which is in our guidelines as well. So I'm gonna make a motion to accept the appeal.
Just a point of clarification, Michael. I believe the guidelines are only limited to 6 if they're not going through, they don't have to go to the DRB. So I don't think I don't think it's the 6 that is the basis of the misapplied, arguably. It's that it was not, we were not aware that of the excessive glare and impact to the street and neighboring properties. If that's the basis, I would second your motion.
Yeah, and I would amend it to also include, it's also, if you look at our guidelines, you know, I would say it says landscaping lighting should be integrated into the natural environment and designed to complement the architecture of the house. The design, wattage, lamp source, and number of fixtures must not result in glare or excessive light levels when viewed from streets or neighboring properties. And so I think that specific guideline is kind of what I think was misapplied from the quantity of the lights.
Okay, then I would second your motion.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just as a reminder, Elena, Brian, Mike B, you guys cannot vote. You guys must abstain. So that leaves myself, Bruce, Emily, and Jim to vote. So I vote in the affirmative. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes, I vote in the affirmative.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Emily, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right, so and then Elena, Brian, and Mike B all abstain. So 403, the motion passes. Is the applicant here tonight to hear the application over?
Yes, the applicant is here. Asking Ian to unmute.
And now Elena, Brian, and Mike B, you guys, since we're hearing in de novo, you guys can take part in the voting for hearing the application over.
All right, Ian, you are unmuted.
Okay, thanks very much. Would it be possible to bring up my de novo presentation?
You can verbally address the DRB.
Well, it's a very visual presentation because there have been claims made about brightness and effect on the neighboring properties that I'd like to illustrate graphically.
Was there a specific page you wanted to refer to, or you
Starts
want?
on 22, I believe.
No, I actually
it was
sent
an
the Chandra
updated
presentation.
Yeah, it's
today.
an updated. He provided an updated statement in the event that the appeal would be accepted. The way that our process is set up is he can verbally speak to it. I can bring those up if you would like to see it.
It's very material to countering basically the misrepresentations that have just been given to the full DRB.
If the DRB would like for me to
Well, so but we don't have it officially in the record.
You don't have that officially in the record. That's just something that was sent in response to the appeal.
Okay, so basically,
yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a way to pull that up because it's not officially in the record.
You're going to make a decision on glare and material impact on neighboring properties without any visual evidence.
We haven't made a motion yet, one way or the other.
Okay. Well, let me go through my de novo presentation anyway, and I'll try and do it verbally rather than visually. So the appeal statement itself has 17 misrepresentations. It is replete with accusations of me knowingly having misrepresented to the DRB panel. So here's some facts. If you look at my DRB application, you'll notice that the applicants are both my wife and I. The NCA board said that I misrepresented the start date of the project. they said I misrepresented that the project had already been started. If you look at the check mark against is this project existing, it's checked. It also has a proposed completion date of 1/15/23, which was a guess on my part based on how I thought the DRB panel process would go. The actual completion date of the project was early February 2023. And it was early February 2023 because that's when I ordered the last 4 of the 16 lights that are now installed on my property that was unanimously approved by the DRB panel. Now let's talk about glare. The solar-powered mushroom lights give 8 lumens of brightness. One of our board members, or a former board member, suggested to our whole community on an occasion when there was a potential intruder that everybody should switch on every single one of their building attached lights. Those lights are around about 40 watts. Some of them are 60 watts. Each one of those bulbs is around about 450 lumens. The total of my 16 8-lumen mushroom lights is 128 lumens. So are you seriously telling me that those 16 mushroom lights are going to be a threat to the frog mating population, which is what the NCA board suggested was one of the material impacts of my 16 8-lumen mushroom lights? The other fact here is that these lights have been in place for 6 years. In fact, there were more lights in place for 6 years. I replaced them, one, because the older ones were getting decrepit and ant-filled and goodness knows what else, but also in response to the request by the NCA board that I either put in an application to allow me to continue to have the mushroom lights that have been there for 6 years or remove them. I elected to put in an application. That application was unanimously approved by the DRB panel. On getting that approval, the NCA board then decided in a closed meeting with no reference to any of the other cluster members, came up with an affected party statement, with an appeal statement that is replete with 17 misrepresentations of my project. I've sent you a presentation with 8 of them. The start date of the project, the end date of the project, the scope of the project, when it started, what changes took place, etc. If you read that appeal statement, you could probably identify without even me telling you that they are misrepresentations. I sent a set of photographs today. If you look at the vegetation on my property, the landscaping on my property, out of those 16 mushroom lights, if you stand on the street facing my property, you could probably see 4 or 5 of them illuminated. The illumination starts when night falls, and the illumination at the 8 lumen level lasts for about 2 hours. By 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, it's probably down to 2 or 3 lumens, and by just after midnight, they're off. So if somebody could explain to me how that's having a material impact on the neighborhood, I'd be very interested to hear it. And with the current vegetation on the property, a lot of them are obscured. So prior to submitting my application to the DRB, having found out that the NCA board were not going to allow Reston to make the decision as to whether my lights were appropriate, they decided to sign on as an affected party. And again, if you read that affected party statement, it is replete with misinformation, incorrect statements, and pure speculation as to the future of what may happen on our cluster. You gave your approval to me on the 24th of January. You would expect, based on the sky is falling presentation by Linda, that we were going to suddenly have a rash of people installing up to 32 mushroom lights on their property. In the 4 or 5 months that have transpired, not a single extra light has been installed. So if that is a prediction of the future, I think the community is quite safe. I also talked with Cam a lot about, how to go about this process. And I thought I'd done everything correctly. I thought I'd filled up my form with accurate information. I went about, talking with the covenants team about the whole process. And I thought literally when you guys gave me the formal unanimous approval, I'd be done with it. But what happens? The NCA board, as I say, in a closed process, and I've got evidence in an email from the secretary of our NCA board, they concocted their appeal statement in a closed process. Now, let me point you to something else about our neighbors, the people on the development. The people who are potentially materially impacted by my decorative lights all signed my application. That's in the presentation that I gave during the DRB panel. And in fact, the NCA board put out a statement to the community basically saying that this appeal statement was sent on behalf of all 32 members of our association. The 4 people that signed my approval, signed my application, and I only need 2, but I actually got 4 to demonstrate that it isn't a problem for a lot of people in the community. They all disputed in a recent email string the characterization that the NCA board said that this was an issue for the whole of our community. It isn't. It's an issue for a very small subset of our community that is, for some reason, got it in for me, having me had this lighting structure on my property for a combination of 6 and 4 years. Ask yourself the question, why has this suddenly become a problem? Why hasn't there been a single complaint about my property? There was a complaint. I'm now aware that there was a complaint about another neighbor's property who had more than 6 mushroom lights. Do you know what the solution they came up with? They decided not to put in an application. They swapped out their mushroom lights for uplights. There is no cluster standard for the number of uplights you can have. But the problem is not the direction of the lights. It's meant to be the brightness and the impact of a neighbor. So the neighbor of this particular NCA member had received a complaint. I'm still to hear from a single person in our community a complaint against my property. Ask yourself why this process is starting to go. It has been in play. Now, they've told lies about when they asked for compliance. They suggested in their appeal statement that they set a compliance date in August. There is no date in that communication. I can show you a video of the NCA board meeting on November 17th, when the board set the compliance date of December 15th. I wrote the draft of my application on November 18th with the intent of submitting it within the next few days. I sat down with my wife and I and said, you know, this is ridiculous. We are seriously going to waste a whole number of people's time talking about 128 lumens of brightness on our property. I can't believe this is happening. In my presentation that I sent to LaShonda, there's a video of that discussion about the compliance date, what was required to make compliance. So I submitted my application, I think it was on December the 13th. I had no clue that the board would have a private and secret meeting and decide to sign on as an affected party. The board meeting was December 15th. They could have delayed by 1 day the decision to sign on as an affected party and have that discussion at the board meeting. They did exactly the same thing with the appeal statement. They ran out the clock on, can't remember the dates, March 13th. They signed their appeal statement after having considered it for 2 weeks in private session to sign the appeal statement. They then met as a board on March 14th, and not a single discussion was had regarding the appeal statement. No notification to members, no claims of the dire impact that my lights are going to have on the environment. It's a complete sham.
Yep. Well, let's go around the board and see. Let's just review the application for what we have now that we're reviewing it. Let's just move on. I can't control what happens inside of your board, but we can control, kind of your application that we have before us. So let me go around the room and see if anyone has any questions for you. Now you're basically asking for approval of these 16 lights. Yes, the panel did approve it. It was appealed. It's part of our process. Now everybody that's on the board gets to review it. And so you'll have kind of more opinions. So
could I just ask one question about compliance?
Sure.
My understanding was that the enforcement and compliance of the mushroom lights for the 6 cluster standard will be enforced when I sell my property.
Well, it could go to legal committee as well.
Okay, so let's go to legal committee then.
I have nothing to do with legal committee. I'm just saying that's where it could go.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
So are you saying you're withdrawing your application?
No, I'm my application is proceeding. I'm just wondering what the recourse.
You're saying you want to go straight to legal committee. So
no, I didn't say I want to go. No, I didn't say that at all. I said that should you rule against, I just wanted to know what the compliance process would be.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're here as volunteers. We don't.
I'm a volunteer too.
Well, you're a homeowner in this.
I was a volunteer before they kicked me off the board.
So, anyways, Elena, do you have any questions about the application?
No.
Okay. Jim, do you have any questions about the application?
No.
Brian, do you have any questions?
I guess my only question had to do with if I came to the property today, how many lights would I see? Mushroom lights and versus like string lights or lights in addition to the 16 approved.
Okay, if you came to my property today, you'd see 0 string lights illuminated because I only switch them on when we're using the patio. And you would see probably from any vantage point around my property 4, possibly 5 mushroom lights. A number of them are, and again, if I could show you visually, a number of them are obscured by vegetation. Some of them are in the dry creek bed along at the back of my property that nobody could see unless they're actually on my property. There are some around a decorative bridge at the back of my property that Linda started to give you a cock and bull story about a drainage pump, which has completely nothing to do with my application. But I challenge you to come on to site and say that I am materially impacting any neighbors, any person driving past Regatta Lane, or frogs, wildlife, or anything else that they put in their affected party statement.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I do think that potentially this may need to require what we call a go and see, portion of the application where us board members will come out at night and actually see it, right? And I think because of the claims that there are, I think that would be important before we do make a decision.
Excellent.
Brian, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that's a great idea, Michael. I was just say like I have driven by at night, when this application came through, I guess a month or so ago, and that's in the letter. It talks about, that's why I keep harping on it. So I'll stop after this, but I'm harping on the string lights because I did see the string lights illuminated when I drove by on the lattice work, and they were much brighter and projected a lot more than these mushroom lights that were originally.
Yeah, can I describe the spec of those string lights? They're also solar powered string lights. They're 5-watt LED lights. The prior version of the lights that I had an on and off, sorry, a auto and off option. We had the solar panels mounted on top of the privacy fence, which made it very difficult to get to. So those string lights were on most of the time. And I didn't receive a single complaint from anybody in our community, not a single one. And the board has still failed to acknowledge that nobody's ever complained. With this new set, there are Sunforce LED string lights, 5 watts per bulb, 30 bulbs. They've got an on, an off, and an auto. The solar panels are at ground level, which is very easy for me to switch to the off position. They are in the off position and will be in the off position probably for 300 days out of the year. We're going to switch them on when we use the patio. And anybody that has been past my property would know, like, for example, I didn't use our patio today. I'm talking with you guys. They're off. They'll be off tomorrow, probably, because I don't think we're going to be on patio tomorrow. Probably at the weekend, they'll be on. And they go off on their own volition at about 1 o'clock in the morning max.
Okay.
And there are thousands of string lights all around Reston.
Are the string lights a part of this application, or is it just the?
No, and there's a reason.
They're not part of this, so.
No, definitely not.
Okay. So I do think, I think initially the appeal was accepted because of this sheer number of lights. And I think looking at it in person will be able to give us the ability to determine whether the glare is impactful on the street, which is essentially all we can determine from a board standpoint. So Mike B, did you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions, Michael. I drove past it at night.
You did?
Fine.
Okay. Bruce?
Second, what Brian had brought up, the string lights were the only bright bits that I had in my trip past. So.
Okay. Bruce?
No, I have no question. I concur that GOSI is the best way to apply the guidelines in this situation.
Okay. Emily?
I concur as well. Go see with the lights that are under review, illuminated would be the best recourse.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion then?
Michael, before you make the motion, do you want to make sure that
The affected party.
Correct.
Yeah. Since we're hearing the application de novo, like to hear from the affected party. Is the affected party still here?
Absolutely. I am outraged by what Mr. Strand has said to you. And
can I just remind you real quick, Linda, before you get started, just give me 1 second. As affected party, you have 3 minutes to state your claim.
I will. So the thing is that Mr. Strain is very cagey because what he does is he says, I only have it on the lowest thing. And then he rearranges all of them and he has them on the high things. So he'll be all ready for you to come and he'll have everything, according to what you want to see. But that isn't the way it stays. And
that is a complete lie.
It's not. You have already called me a liar on this, and I am very offended, and that's not the way this should be carried on. Ian, you accused us of having all of these things. You bring all of these things in here that have no place in this discussion. The things from the street are very you don't have all your neighbors. The Morrises did not sign off on you, and they didn't, and they're directly opposite you. So nobody complains because everybody is intimidated by you and they don't want to get in your crosshairs. I know you think that's very funny, but it's true. And the fact is that all these things that you said that were erroneous in our appeal, we did the best that we could. We come from a good place. This is not personal. This is any house that was doing that we would be here as an affected party, but you cannot believe that. So, you can do this whole kabuki thing with having everybody come and look at it you have them all hidden and everything, but that's not the way that it's looked over the years at all. So there's no reason for you to have 16 lights on your property. None.
Could I challenge that? Because that.
No, you can challenge.
Hold on, guys, this
I'm
is just
sorry,
an affected
one
party.
moment.
Okay.
This is just you having your statement. I mean, if you want to continue, you can, Linda. I think you have a few minutes left. Or we can.
You have 3 minutes left.
I tried to keep this very impartial and very to the facts, and then Ian will come in and start to misrepresent just as he's done before, and he twists things and he makes it seem like he's being actually persecuted. I heard him say that on this, right? So this is not a simple thing, because he will go to death to get these lights. He will do anything to get them. And I am here to represent the cluster. Not everyone, but I have a fiduciary responsibility to stand up and say that we don't want that. That sets a new precedence for lighting in our cluster. And Ian says, oh, no one's gone and done it, but they will do it. And we will have the problems that and so my responsibility as the president is to tell you that is not good for the cluster. And I don't care whether Ian says, well, nobody's done it, but they will. And this is how it's a very slippery slope, and it's happening throughout Reston. So that was why I talked to you about the things that I'm seeing. I've been here 27 years. And I'm very invested in Reston. I believe in it. I believe in its mission. I am here because of that. I'm not here. This is not a personal vendetta as Ian would like to present it. Why suddenly now? Why? No, it's because it's been a long journey with these lights. And if you let him have 16 lights, you are setting a precedence. And they're not necessary. It's not essential. So it's just because he wants to have them. And that is something that if you're abiding by the Reston deed and you're respectful of that, then you will make a sage decision about this, not just because one resident wants to have his desire of having these lights around. I mean, I think
Linda.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am. That is your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm just because we need to move on, I'm going to make a motion to defer that the application to the next available board meeting for making sure that all the panel members can go do a go see and go look at the application at night. So there's a motion.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion second. Any further discussion? What I'd like to amend my motion is I'd also like to see the new application that the affected part or that the applicant had for tonight, a part of whatever the next design review is for it as well.
Okay, so just a response to the appeal statement.
Correct. To have he had a de novo application, he said that addressed some of these, had all the light levels and the lumens and all that. I'd like to make sure that that's included in the application when it comes back after the deferral. Bruce, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
All right, motion passes 601.
Hang on,
No,
there were
I
two
abstained
abstentions.
as well.
Oh, Elena abstained, 502. All right, thank you guys. Hamlet cluster.
I wasn't able to identify the applicant. If someone is here on behalf of Hamlet Cluster, could you please raise your hand? They didn't indicate on their application that they wanted to have their application reviewed in their absence. They didn't. Either way, so I believe we can move forward with reviewing it. It's for a site lighting.
Yeah, I thought this could go through panel review, but it can't.
Yeah, site lighting has to go to full board.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions on the application?
Maybe it's just because we've done a bunch of these, but this looked very familiar.
Yeah, I thought this was an appeal because I had already reviewed. I was like,
I swear to God, I've seen this before. Maybe it's just I've seen these fixtures before. I don't know, but
We reviewed something similar for another cluster. It was Bayfield cluster last month.
Okay.
This application seemed very reasonable. I think they were just replacing the amount of poles they have now. They were not adding or subtracting, and they had a a full cutoff fixture. I think at 3000 K color. So I thought everything looked in order on this application.
it was a location for location, right?
Correct.
So I don't have any commentary, Michael. I'm fine.
Anybody else?
So we're just replacing the poles, the head, everything else is the same, the box light.
Well, it's a new light fixture as well, Bruce. If you go to slide,
I meant but the shape is the same.
Yeah, it's still a shoebox looking fixture.
Yeah,
if you go to slide 28, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think it's just a little slimmer than what they've got now. A little more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I think there's 2 poles that physically needed to be replaced based on the description of work. There might be 2 that were damaged or something to that effect.
Along with the concrete bases.
Yeah.
Are you sure we didn't just do this one?
I think it's
I'm telling you, man.
cluster.
We've
I
had
think it's a sister cluster.
we've had quite a few site lighting replacements.
Yeah, but just the 2 poles need to be replaced.
Yeah, I had an application with you all that had 2 poles that needed to be replaced. So I would have.
Thank you for making me not feel crazy.
No.
Really, when they were installed, there was only 2 that needed to be replaced in all clusters. So anyone want to make a motion then? Everything.
I move to approve the application as submitted.
I'll second.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 7-0. That one's easy. All right. Application J.
All right, so
Is this an appeal? This is an appeal by the applicant, correct?
So it's not an appeal. The applicant received a disapproval to remove the patio and the walkway. And it had some additional requirements. If they wanted to keep it, then they needed to submit a new application with drawings and something from like an architect or a landscaper. So they submitted some new stuff. It's not an actual appeal. So it's basically the applicant, it's a new application. Correct. With background.
Okay.
The applicant is on asking Tina to unmute.
Can you please have my husband unmuted also, please?
And sure, what's your husband's name?
Christopher Sun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Christopher, is he on iPad? I don't see Christopher's son here.
He is on his iPad.
Okay.
So yeah, he's
Okay.
listening to all this right now.
All right.
Thank you.
Christopher, you're unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you guys can present your application, it looks like we're reviewing a new application. So obviously there's some background here, but since it sounds like that old one expired, this one is kind of a new application. So walk us through what you got.
Yeah, so the main deal was that we had this whole drawing. We didn't know we need to get approval before we can build this thing. So we started building it, and certainly our neighbor complained about it, and he filed the complaint. So we stopped the construction. So on the picture in 6, it kind of gives you an idea what the size of this was, and we can have a measurement of it. So the main thing that you guys were having us to do is figure out our drainage issue. You can see, whereas the brick is budding, you can see they're all wet because the grass is not growing. Now on the picture right there, on picture 6, you can see there are markers. The wooden stake is where the sprinkler system was going. That's for our side. Right next to it is a red marker. That's the property line. That's our neighbor. If you enlarge, you can see kind of where the sight line goes. So one of the complaints that you guys had was, give us a drawing, and there's the contour map, which actually found from our neighbor left when they moved out. So if you look at the contour map, you can see how the water is kind of drained. You can see from this picture there too, it's drained from our neighbor, our side, all the way down to, our grass, so it always stays wet. So our idea was trying to fix that by building this sidewalk patio, coat. So that's the drainage system. You can see what we're actually putting in. It's called a quick and easy. And there's another drawing of what the end will be, this pop-up. That's what everything will drain. But the main thing is, our neighbor has been complaining about the side of this getting all wet and, water is not draining. But if you look at our property line, his grass has never been disturbed because all the water is coming to our side. So I made some modification to the patio walkway because if they're too big, so I decided to remove one of these little brick tiles that are by 16 by 16, both front and the side. So now the actual measurement will be a little bit smaller. That dimension was put in on. Let's see, where did she put it? We are modify that. Let's see. Yeah, on the drawing, the picture 5, there's a little side note on there. The size of what the closest dimension, which is 6.1 feet from our neighbor, is our closest where the brick is, but now it would be 6 inches smaller than what our original design was. So that's our new proposal. If it's good enough for you guys to approve that, then we're finish that with a smaller dimension on our walkway patio.
So here it's saying, so staff, I'm seeing slide down, just scroll down just a little bit. So the final size you're requesting is 6.7 feet. On staff, 6.7 feet by 53.7 feet is basically the sidewalk / patio dimension.
So yeah, original was 55 by 8, so it'd be 16 inches smaller than 5.
Right, which would be 6'8" essentially would be the
Right, exactly.
The width, yeah, okay. Okay. All right, let me hear from the affected party and then we'll come back to you.
I
Chris.
understand it a little differently. It's 8 feet wide, not 6'8".
Well, no, it was 8 foot wide. What they're saying is the
Okay.
revised application is taking out one block that's 16 inches.
Got it.
If you
Thank
subtract
you.
1
6
foot
foot
from
8.
that. Yep,
Okay.
yep. So let me hear from the affected party and then we'll come back and ask you any questions. Okay, sir?
Sure.
Is the affected party here, Steph?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Wood.
So Brad, if you could walk me through, you have three minutes for your affected party status. So feel free to start whenever.
Great, thank you, and thanks for your time. Want to make clear, while this is a quote, new application, this is actually the third application for the exact, not change whatsoever, same design and construction. This time, they just added a 2-paragraph opinion from a company called Sept LLC. Now, after my affected party statement was in, they did update to offer to remove the single line of bricks on the front and side, but it doesn't comply with the very specific instructions they were given at the prior hearings. Main issue is not the drainage issue, it's the sheer size. It's also the drainage issue. So even the removal of the brick to make the walkway 7 feet wide, or 6 and 8, as they say, but they're omitting the 4-inch wall, so it's actually 7 feet, would be more than twice the size of the 3 feet they were consistently told. It extends from the front yard, takes up almost all the green space while going right up to, if not crossing over, the property lines. At the original December 6th meeting, the board made clear the size had to change. Mr. Lozowski stated that because of its size, it didn't work as a patio or a walkway. Mr. Ramos said any resubmission had to be significantly scaled down because they wouldn't accept an almost 8-foot wide walkway, and they had concerns with how much green space was limited and how my property was encroached upon. And Ms. Clark also said they needed to have a detailed drainage plan given the extensive damage that the property project causes, and submitted the exact same application, just adding that cryptic drawing of the drainage pipe, which has been resubmitted here. At the January 3rd meeting, Ms. Clark, Mr. Ramo, Ms. Lozowski stated not only did the new submission not approach an adequate drainage plan, which is the exact same plan you have here, but they reminded the sons of the prior statements they would not accept a walkway more than approximately 3 feet wide. They note again how intrusive the project is and it didn't work with the neighborhood at all. So in addition to the drainage issues, the January 10th order found the same plan you're reviewing today was, quote, not in conformance with design guidelines for patio walkway, which state the patio walkway should be an appropriate size for the area in which it is to be located, with consideration in the form of setbacks or landscaping of its physical and visual impact on adjacent properties in the street. Close quote. Finally, I'll note that the statement that he just made in a short Sept LLC letter that the construction is more than 6 feet of the property line is false, as shown by their photographs, which show the construction 4 feet from the property line at the 2/3 point of construction and getting even closer as it moves toward the street right up to the property line. It's so close, I'm worried the pipe they want to dig might dig up my sprinkler pipes. The board's consistently brought up 3 feet as appropriate walkway size. This is 8 feet 4 inches. If they remove a 16-inch square at 7 feet, it goes all the way to the front yard. It's very intrusive. It takes up the green space. I have tried several times to approach my neighbors, ask them to sit down and talk with me and work out a compromise. I've been here 20 years, never had an issue, but they refuse to talk at all. So they shouldn't be given a fourth opportunity and should be required to remove the partially done construction. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me go around the room and see if there's any questions for the applicant. Elena, did you have any questions for Chris?
Yeah, I'm still looking for a slide that shows a 6'8" dimension. Is that just verbal?
It's the only way. So slide 5 is the only one that basically shows a staff note that is saying they're going to remove the 16-inch by 16.
Okay, got it.
Right.
The staff note. So
this
all
says
right,
this
I'm
shows
sorry.
an 8 foot, so it's going to step in. I think this is a certified plat from what I'm looking at. It looks like it. The affected party is concerned about the property line, but if you look at this, it does show that there's a 14-foot 1 setback from the property line at the front corner of the house. So if they come out, even if they came out 8 feet, which that's what's shown here, they theoretically, it's tricky as it goes a little bit front, past the house in the front. So it does look like it's probably about 4 feet from the property line at the front. And then it goes there maybe about 5 feet or so, if it was at the 8 foot, still. But yeah, this is the only drawing, Elena, that kind of shows that, which I don't think is necessarily as clear as it could be. So.
Yeah, and I was just looking for dimensions and missed the staff note. Thank you for pointing that out.
Jim, did you have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. Brian, you have any questions?
No questions.
Mike B.
So we've got a pop-up drain, we've got some other miscellaneous materials, but again, we're talking about solely this walkway patio deal, right? The other stuff is ancillary to attempt to address previous questions, comments?
Well, I believe it's a new application for just the walkway, I believe, right, staff? Or are we having to review all of the other items?
The affected party would like to make a comment.
One moment. So this was for the existing patio and the walkway along the sides. To include all of the, all of the criteria, the gravel, the patio,
on the decision letter from the 10th, it states drainage as the 4th bullet as part of that decision. So presumably those items are in.
It was disapproved before.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is part of the application.
And again, just trying to clarify, because I want to make sure we're addressing everything that's in play. So, okay. All right. So I guess my question is, other than the hand-drawn sketch kind of indicating that there's going to be a pipe of some kind that takes a turn towards the driveway and is a pop-up drain pipe. I mean, that's the end, right? That's the only detail we've got showing what we're planning.
That is correct.
We have the thing called a quick and easy drain system there we're implementing for the drainage area.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, if you guys give us, let's say, okay, well, you guys can have this size walkway patio and kind of give us maybe guidelines to, okay, well, what's the size that's acceptable for us to build it? I guess that's my question, because we keep coming back and, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, if we make this a 5 foot and, 40 feet, dimension is going to be approved. So is it possible for you guys to give us like clear guidelines what we can build?
Well, Michael, I have a couple of questions for the applicant, if that's okay.
Go for it, Emily.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've noticed, one thing that we haven't addressed in this is that there are air conditioning units on the side of the house, which I see that the applicant is building a patio sort of around a walk patio around, but at the area alongside the units, that walkway would be, somewhat in the 3 to 4 foot wide range because of the air conditioning units. So at least in that location, if the client they were going to have a walkway that went to the front of the house, it would need to go around the air conditioning units at the very least. Maybe that's not necessarily a question thus far, but just kind of pointing out that even if we said, yes, the walkway needs to be 3 feet wide, at a certain point, it would need to jog over and around those air conditioning units. So that's just one thing to note. And the second that I wanted to point out is that on the drainage plan, while there is, some arrows being shown on the original grading plan, one that's a development grading plan. It is not usually reflected as an as-built drawing. From the site photos and the issues, I'm not seeing, signs that even if you put that pop-up, French drains and pop-ups don't really go together. So that standing water doesn't really have anywhere to go. And, you know, I don't see how that would help the issue in the grand scheme of things. It'll absorb a little bit of water, but it won't help in the grand scheme of things. And lastly, the detail call out for the French drain, which I believe is on page, what is this? The sketch that shows a section of the drain pipe and the pop-up elevation does show that there'll be river rock going over top of the pipe adjacent to the walkway with no dimension. Those drain E-flows are usually about 7 or 9 inches wide, so like a foot wide of gravel. And based on the applicant's plan, that would be an 8-foot wide walkway, or I'm sorry, a 6'7" walkway, and then a foot of gravel next to it, which I don't know is going to,
the gravel is going to
cause further
basically,
issues.
Sitting on top of the drain pipe, but there will be covered with a dirt, and there will be grass to be going on top, so it's not going to be visible, you know. And then none of the drain
Okay,
pipe
so
will
do
be
you see
visible.
that note, but right, but that is a note that's called out on the plans, but not actually what's shown on the drawings. So that would be a concern, because we could approve one thing and what is on the drawings shows gravel at the surface, and then
But if
the other
you-
shows, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we added that little, right, like one statement says, this will be covered with the soil and covered with the grass, so I guess because that was a previous drawing.
Slide 2 shows what he's talking about the note that says this will be covered with soil and grass.
Yeah, it's right there.
Now,
Yes, it's just that with the drawings conflicting with the notes, it does, I mean, the section elevation is supposed to show the intended site condition, which, you know, if that is grass, that's fine, but that drainage plan drawing, I guess what it boils down to is not what I would consider sufficient to justify if we are trying to address the drainage issues and stagnating water being caused between the properties, then I don't feel that drainage plan is sufficient to kind of address that problem.
Did Mike B, do you have any questions for the applicant?
We just kind of rolled through my concerns with regard to the installation of this and whether it's actually going to, you know, materially impact what's a bad drainage concern here. I mean, you've increased some hardscape there, not allowing the water to get through where it's going. It's ponding up against the hardscape elements. I'm not liking it, and I'm not seeing sufficient detail to feel good about it.
Okay. Bruce, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, well, the first question I had asked the applicant is, what do we have here, patio or walkway? And my notion has always been that a side patio would need to be landscaped appropriately and drained appropriately and not interfere with the neighbor. And if it's a walkway, I don't know why we need something this wide and also something that's not appropriately landscaped. So the problem all along has been that if it's a walkway, it should be treated as a walkway and under our guidelines, and I don't think a side patio is appropriate here in any event under our guidelines. And the drainage is a function to begin with of trying to get it both, the applicant trying to have it both ways. So I don't have a question, because in my mind, it's the same application I've seen, I don't know, 3 times.
I don't have any questions for the applicant either, so I guess let's just use some further discussion as a board. Bruce's point of it being a walkway versus a side patio, I do agree. A patio is not, to me, would not be acceptable for this type of property. you know, in Reston, there are some houses that have side patios. This would not, you know, this architecture and this kind of layout of houses would not accommodate that. So I think we can call it what it needs to be, which would be a walkway. I do think a walkway, our standards say it needs to be set within the, you know, landscaping of the property. It needs to be kind of look harmonious with the architecture, et cetera. You know, this at its scale is obviously not to that effect right now. I think the amount of hardscape is part of the issue that I have with it. I think if it was broken up into maybe some solid, you know, area on the right here, if they wanted to put their trash cans or something, if that's why they kind of had it, and then it broke off into pavers where there was, you know, mulch between it, or there was plantings that were along here that were, you know, shade tolerant, that would also help, you know, soak up some of the water. You know, I'm an architect, I'm not a landscape architect, but I'm sure, Emily, you can kind of envision like kind of what I'm talking about. If it has that kind of walkway feel, I think that's something that would be acceptable to us as the board, and it would fit into the surrounding harmonious. I'm just suggesting this and saying this out loud because the applicant kind of asked what would be approvable. I think you know, if we could give you know, some ideas to them to be able to come back with, I think would be beneficial to try to help resolve this.
May I say something?
Standing issue. Yep.
So let's say if we build, because you know, you can see there's AC, there's 2 AC units there, and I mean that's part is that, you know, as it rains, you know, the dirt, you know, splash all over. It's all covered up with the dirt. So if we downsize this and have this, I guess, you know, that's where my deck is. I guess you can call that a little patio area, right where the AC unit ends, and redesign this whole other side. Is that possible?
I don't follow the question.
Oh, so rather than having this long walkway patio, because I mean, it's in the past, the discussion is, okay, is this a walkway or patio? Then, you know, the letters will still say walkway patio. So rather than having this long from front to the back and have this break it off, so where our AC unit is, have a smaller, you know, we're divided up into, you know, AC unit toward the back with our deck is, have that same dimension. Because my idea was to put my grill right where my deck is there, you know, on a platform, and redesign this front part to get rid of this, you know, structure. Is that possible?
That would you're basically saying you would want to do a rear patio off the bottom of the stairs of the deck. Yeah, and I think that would be possible because then you could help break up and get rid of the huge amount of hardscape between the two. I think you could find a good way to integrate that into the landscaping.
And on the side where, you know, because we have no kind of the room to put our trash can, so we put it on our driveway, have a little area right there where we can put our trash can and have a just.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be acceptable.
I agree with. Yeah, I think we need a drawing, and I agree with Michael. I think the issue is that it is monolithic. This kind of very simple rectangular shape is not conducive with, you know, the aesthetics of the property. So breaking it into a rear patio with a sidewalk and then a small trash pad area with appropriate landscaping and drainage would be acceptable, but we would have to see that drawing and make sure that it is detailed enough that we could give approval, including dimensions, as well as if we want to call out any plant species and a drainage plan with spot elevations.
And another question regarding this quick and easy drain solution. Is that appropriate to put in as far as the drainage system goes if we're to redesign this? Or do we have to go something? I mean, I'm not a, you know, I'm not a landscaper.
Honestly, if
so.
it's below grass, Yeah, if it's below grass, technically we don't even as a board have to approve it. The only thing we have to approve is the pop-up drain. Because that's the only thing you can see. I can't speak to the drainage system. I'm not familiar with it. Emily might be able to, but I think honestly, if you help give, so your neighbor, if you look at your neighbor's property, they have mulch and plants that are helping soak up a lot of their, obviously they're uphill a little bit as well. But I think
Yeah,
if
because water always drains to our side. It's ours.
if you introduce some more grass and plants, and other mulch and things that can absorb water, I think it's going to help as well.
No, can I say something, please?
Sure.
Okay, we tried to plant some plants there too, but there's so much water, they're all dying, and it always attracts mosquitoes. And you have to wear boots to get around there, mud boots actually. And then we tried to put some grass there, we put some plants there. It was just not working. It was just so much soaked up. Look at the ground, how wet it is. And then the sprinkler guy said that if this issue goes on, he said that we might have a water damage to our basement. And I would like to prevent that. And if we get the damage on
That is.
I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. I was just saying, I think that an appropriate drainage plan that would coincide with a walkway plan so that you do not have to, go through a wet side yard. The clear intention of the original grading plan was for water to pass between your two houses and flow downhill. And we shouldn't interrupt that intended grading plan. However, you would need to seek and get a plan that is a little bit more detailed in order to both deal with the stormwater that you're experiencing, as well as finding plants that will be able to, one, sustain, that kind of shady and moist condition, as well as help soak up some of the water. But that would take getting a design done by either a drainage expert or a landscaper or a landscape architect, which I don't think we as a board are able to give exact recommendations on, but I think we need more detail in order to approve or deny the plan. If that's my.
And if I could just add that the comment that Emily made about a French drain, which is essentially what you're proposing, doesn't work well with a pop-up drain. Those need to either go to daylight, in other words, flow downhill, which doesn't look like your grade's going to let it do, or go to a dry well to drop it down the water. But it's not going to pop up, and there's not going to be any water pressure. It's all gravity. And a pop-up drain depends on sufficient water pressure to make it pop up and flow. So I think I would endorse the notion that we need a landscaper or a landscape architect to come up with a drainage solution there that works.
If they're going to keep this, large impervious area.
That's true.
If they decided to scale back and just do a small patio in the back for the grill off of the rear steps, and then just had a small little patio off the side for the trash cans, we see applications like that all the time. I don't think I would ask for a full, drainage study. I think because of the sheer size of the current plan, which is, close to whatever 6'8" by, 70 feet is, or 60 feet, is that 1,200 square feet, a little, whatever, or 120 square feet, sorry. That's a significant amount that needs the water study. But I think if they scale it back dramatically, it would not need to be done. So with that, does anyone have a motion?
Can I just to ask question again, what you just said? So if we scale this down, we could scale it down and resubmit it without the drainage plan?
Potentially, yeah, because then you're not having as much impervious area. So if you, let's say you just wanted to put a back patio, and you just had a little pad for your trash cans, and you're not to the sheer scale that you are right now, you know, you may not need that drainage study because you're not impacting the drainage anymore. Right now, this is impacting the drainage for how you're doing it. Yes, it's getting the water away from your house, but it's also kind of creating this, you know, super wet spot edge condition, which is what our concern is with it. So depending on the resubmission, it may
satisfy the neighbors' concerns with the current standing water, as well as the center line swale in between the properties. Again, I can't, we may not be able to enforce that, but I would strongly recommend that some drainage renovations take place in conjunction with the
And again, just to clarify, reiterate, it's underline underscore. We can't detrimentally impact the drainage. I know its current state is what it is, but we can't exacerbate it, make it worse, etc. So that is within the purview, right? So.
Anybody have a motion?
I mean, Michael, were we thinking about deferring this pending further study and, you know, an updated plan?
I just think the application is so far off that I think it just would, to me, I would say it'd be more needs to be a motion to disapprove.
That's fair. I was trying to give some manner of like, what's the faster turnaround? But I mean, there's a lot of details to be worked out, especially if it's a fundamental shift in what we're trying to install here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky situation because there's been existing applications on that have already been disapproved.
Yeah, so I have no problem with that. I'll make a motion to disapprove the application.
I'll second.
Okay.
So I guess, what does that mean?
Well, right
So,
now
I
the
mean-
board is currently got a motion in play, so it doesn't mean anything yet.
So there's a motion and a second. So the only thing I would say is with this disapproval that I definitely want to recommend that you guys work with the neighbor to try to see if there's a, you know, a common solution that you guys can come to. And maybe there's a joint effort for this drainage, you know, whatever it be, I don't know. But it's definitely been obviously to the forefront of the issues as well, in addition to the sheer scale of what this was. So I would just kind of recommend that as part of the disapproval package.
And just to further clarify, we do need to have an enforcement action, whether if it's going to be disapproved.
Like another time frame or
a time frame. So are you, if you're going to disapprove it, are you asking them just to submit something new, or are you asking them to remove? Just need a bit of clarification there.
Well, I would amend the motion, say that it is disapproved and they have to remove the existing within what's a reasonable amount of time, 90 days? What do
90
we
days
usually
was the
say?
previous action. I would accept that amendment.
And then you guys had, if updated information is not received, that the walkway must be completely removed and area restored to its original appearance.
Yeah, I would correspond with that.
Okay.
I would concur. LaShonda, is that sufficient for you?
Yes. Thank you.
So there's a motion, there's a second, there's some further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, thank you guys. All right. It's 9:37. We got one last thing, LaShonda.
Oh, I have a lot to say, but I'll try to make it as quick as possible. So we're bringing review level revisions as a second part of the design guideline update. We hope that the review levels will improve members' experience, allow a quicker review for certain things. I'll start with the first design guideline that we're proposing to review. If you go to page 4, we've added a staff level review that will allow existing ground level decks. Page 4. That will allow staff to review existing ground level decks that meet the criteria of the design guidelines and the cluster standards. Also proposing that staff could renew applications for deck removals as long as the ground is restored, as well as modifications. For example, adding stairs or adding a landing, as long as the addition is constructed with the same material, the same colors, the same detailing. If they're adding lights, or if they intend to add a privacy screen to the existing deck modification, which dimensions do not exceed 4 feet above the deck railing. So I will stop at each one just to see if anyone has any questions about the first proposal.
So I don't. The only thing I would say, LaShawn, is I don't know if it makes sense. So overall, it looks like you guys are just wanting to add staff review for ones that basically right now have, obviously they're already on con or panel at the moment, and then you guys are looking to add the ability to do staff reviewed. My only question with that would be, at what point do you guys determine, are you then removing con and panel as an option, or is it up to you guys to make the determination whether it can be staff versus con as an example, or is con now removed as an example?
No, so con is not removed as an example. If it was previously there for this particular one, it was not removed. We just added the staff reviewable level.
So what makes it staff reviewable versus con reviewable, I guess, would be my question.
So the criteria that was added is what's in red, is for the existing decks. So existing, any removals or modifications, replacements, we just kind of put a limitation on those. So you would no longer
those
have
specific in red are staff reviewable. Okay,
Correct.
and that's the same for all of the things that we're going to review going forward.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just needed some clarification on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I couple clarifications, because it's the same approach on several, and this will probably help. I don't understand what you mean by existing this or existing that. I don't understand what we're trying to say there.
So for an existing structure, sometimes we get.
Are you saying existing because it's already built, or a replacement of an existing? I don't know what that means.
Correct. Just to clarify, that is for an existing structure. Say, for instance, if something was sited at POA and there's an existing ground level deck that conforms with the design guidelines and the cluster standards, this would give staff the ability to review that to allow a quicker review. Does that answer your question, please?
Yeah. So it means that someone did it before they got approval. That's what I was trying to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then, and without talking about any specific one, there's another place where you have a situation where the staff can do it with with involvement of one DRB member.
Correct.
Okay.
That criteria hasn't changed at all.
So for some of these, the changes do call for those specific, and I'm just trying to group them because they're very similar for each approach. One is to address a level of things that can be done strictly by staff. And the other, there's a slight, and some of the others, and a limited number of others, there's some that can be approved by staff, but they have to have a with the concurrence of a member of the DRB. Is that's the pattern that I saw here?
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
So those, just as Bruce stated, the ground level deck proposals, that would be for cluster and single family homes. Just wondering if any DRB member had any questions or concerns about the proposed criteria here.
So the only thing I would say is that the putting in our standards and existing, like the term existing, I would say we don't, like in our current standards, we don't have the word existing anywhere, right? And so I would hesitate to add that because even though obviously we have a ton of existing items that are reviewed, ultimately, even if they're existing, they're new, right? If they don't meet the guidelines for no application, or if they just don't meet any guidelines, we obviously have to review them to make sure that they do. Whether it's still a staff approvable, yeah, that's not what I'm arguing. I guess just the term existing, I think it'll muddy the waters of people being able to claim, well, you guys have existing in your guidelines. I built it, it's existing. So I would rather, scratch the existing notion, but you say maybe internally, if you guys know that as built, let's say you guys have an as built ground level deck that comes before you that meets all the DRB guidelines and is fine, then sure, that could be reviewed by staff, right? I just think the wording of putting existing in our guidelines is going to, I don't know, it's a little confusing because then.
Well, it's going to permit.
Yeah.
It's going to give, it's a little too permissive. We know it happens, but.
Yeah. So it's not that, there's certain times where if it conforms with the DRB guidelines and you're saying that, doesn't that technically usually mean it doesn't need an application anyways? Or are there certain times where even if it conforms with the DRB guidelines, it would still need an application? Because I know like by right, you can build like a patio on the back of your house as long as it doesn't go out farther than 12 feet and steps in 2 feet from the property line, et cetera, as built with flagstone or concrete or whatever. Like what exactly are you saying when you say with the DRB approved design guidelines?
So just going down the line, just to make sure that it conforms with color, design, and other criteria that's listed in the next line of review. So for consultation and things like that. So, I mean, it would make sense to put as built. We were just trying to afford the members the opportunity if they are going to POA and they have this deck that didn't go before the DRB that needs approval, and they don't, time is of the essence. They may be going to closing,
Right.
We would be able to review that at staff level.
I guess it's just the wording. And honestly, I don't know if we can even do as built either, because then people, I'm trying to find if there's a way. I'm trying to pull up our standards because this is just for single family detached decks, ground family. Because what requires no application is what I'm trying to figure out. And
so for this one, there's no application level. So, I mean, for this one, for ground level decks, it's the color, the material and the color. The deck is constructed and left of wood, left to weather naturally, painted a muted color that's harmonious, but this doesn't address any composite decks or anything like that. The construction would be a solid trim that has been incorporated on any open side of the deck that conceals the joists. And then the location is at the back of the rear yard, and it doesn't project beyond the sides.
Yeah. So I guess I think we just need to be careful with putting any terms existing or as built in the guideline. I think internally, if we need to approve where staff can approve decks that are built per our guidelines, you know, to me, that's all we need to clarify is that the deck is built for our guidelines and staff can approve it, then it's okay. Like, I don't think we need to call out explicitly existing.
Yeah, I think whether it's existing or new, if it conforms with the DRB approved cluster standards, you know, it can be reviewed by staff. And if, you know, then they can appeal to a panel and whatever and keep going if they don't like what staff decides. Or if there's an affected party, staff can't approve it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Okay. So
I think we could just get rid of the word existing. And
I think you just get rid of that. You
just
get rid of that full section.
So just remove existing, okay, and just move on to the next section, which is just removals, the modifications, replacements, lighting, and privacy screens. Is everyone okay with those?
I have a question about the privacy screening, and it's mostly that we're talking about privacy screening. It says it cannot extend more than 4 feet above the existing railing and must be of the same material and color as the existing railing. But as we just kind of touched on, that doesn't necessarily take in place that, you know, if something is composite and aluminum, like, or I just worry about that wording.
Which part? Just the not to exceed portion for the privacy screening, or?
No, I think the not to exceed 4 feet above the deck railing is fine, assuming that the deck railing is, well, again, that's a sticky thing because the client could build a deck railing that is, you know, they're like, hey, it's a railing and it's, you know, 4 feet high, and then we're building a 4 foot tall, and you have an 8 foot privacy structure. And, you know, with townhouses in particular, if they're very close to each other, that could be quite intrusive onto a neighboring property. So I would rather advocate and just say not to exceed a total height of 7 feet, or not to exceed a total height from deck flooring in that nature. And that's pretty standard in other counties when they talk about, you know, adding railings on top of retaining walls and things like that. They just say, you know, with a total height not to exceed, you know, 72 inches or whatever, you know, is the goal with that.
Okay. All right, I have made that.
So that's sort of like the height thing. Yeah, that's just sort of the height thing. And then the must match the material and color of the deck railing. Just carpentry wise, like that may not be possible. If the client has an aluminum railing baluster, they're not going to build their privacy screen out of aluminum balusters. So it just isn't very clear.
Gotcha. I mean, in the intent, I'm sorry, and the intent was for that particular portion of it is for staff could review something that would come through like that, right?
Correct.
If it was anything
that's what I was going to note, is that this is just for staff reviewable, Emily. If somebody comes with something more intricate like that, it would just go to a panel.
Yeah, no, and I understand. It's just the yeah, if I guess if staff goes, well, this is more complicated and I'm just going to go ahead and push it to panel, that's fine. But I guess my argument is just saying that, you know, I think that applicants might get confused as to what or isn't, you know, approvable without panel with that detail.
Gotcha.
Are you guys saying that the maximum height is now 7 feet? I thought it was 6 feet.
I think what I understood Emily was to say is to have a total overall height from ground, from deck flooring up to the maximum
Right.
height that we would like.
But didn't that used to be 6 feet?
I don't know what our
No.
actual screening size is. I'm trying to find what our
I'm looking here now.
guideline says. I know for fences, Jim. I know
Yeah,
it's
6 feet.
but for like a deck screening, I don't know if we have a set guideline on that.
Let me see. Fencing.
I mean, just out of curiosity, why would a deck privacy screen be allowed to be higher than the fence?
I think the argument for that is that the angle of repose is mostly for privacy screens. You've got upstairs windows that are you're trying to screen from the deck. And also you're not, standing, usually the neighbors aren't standing right next to a neighboring privacy screen where they might be to a fence that you can't see over or maintain. Looking at that line item that says 4 feet above the deck, a normal railing is 36 inches. And if you're adding 4 feet on it, then we're hitting
Right, of course.
7. I just want that to be clear. Is it 6 or 7, right?
The current design guideline reads the privacy screen should be no higher than 6 feet from the surface on which it is mounted on, parentheses, or deck, patio, or ground.
Right, so that would effectively increase it to 7 feet.
Yeah, so I think LaShawna, we should just update this to an overall height to stay consistent with our actual privacy screen guideline, which is all that you guys are you're just trying to update it to be whether staff could approve it. Would be, overall height, basically what Emily was suggesting, overall height of 72 inches to stay in conformance with our other guideline, or 6 feet in that instance.
Okay, I have that noted. What about for removals, modifications, replacement, and lighting? Is everyone okay with the proposals? So if an applicant wants to remove the existing deck as long as the area is restored, staff can approve that, because sometimes we have people that apply to remove their deck or to add stairs to the existing deck or add a landing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, are you guys ready to handle all these applications? Is that, I mean, because I know there's been stuff in the past that people, we've tried to add more staff approved stuff. But we've always worried about the kind of infrastructure, so to speak, of I mean, obviously, LaShawna, you've been here for now quite a while at this point. At one point we had new turnover like every other day, it felt like. I mean, can you guys handle, I mean, everything that you're trying to add to staff level is going to put a big burden on you guys. Is that doable?
I believe our staff is ready. I heard a lot of feedback, and a lot of the feedback that I'm proposing is feedback that I've heard from our covenants department. And I believe that our department could handle what we're suggesting.
Okay, yeah. Because I'm sure we could, I'm only just trying to preface it, because I'm sure we could go line item by line item through all these, but I don't know, as a board, what are you ultimately looking for these tonight? Or do we need to approve these? Do these need to go to, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for feedback, and I'm also looking for approval to move to submit these to BOC for review, along with the other revisions that were approved by the board a couple of months ago.
To the resolutions as well, or?
So we had previously presented at the beginning of the year revisions to several design guidelines, as well as a general overview that the board approved.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, and so if anyone else wants to speak up and say something, I just think either what I would like to do is either people could review this just because it's 10 o'clock already. Do you guys want to go through all of these, or do you want to review and just provide feedback by email by no later than next week on any specific guidelines that you guys feel should be, any wording or whatever be amended? Are you guys okay with that, or do you guys want to go through line item by line item?
I would like to defer so that I could go through and read it, go through all the changes that are proposed. Kind of at maybe a slower pace that would allow us to look at it a little more closely.
Yeah, because I think ultimately, from what it looks like, staff is just trying to alleviate some of the stuff that ends up on panels due to POA. Basically to help expedite property sales and to help our members, essentially, is what I'm getting at. I think overall, my biggest thing would be we can't put the word existing or as built in our guidelines. Otherwise, I think we want to make sure and cross-reference anytime, like where Emily pointed out, though, that height difference, right, between, and then Jim's like, well, wait a second, I think our height is 6 feet versus now we're saying it potentially could be 7 feet. I think we need to make sure to cross-reference to make sure that there's no, language that is what's the word I'm looking for? Contradictory. In our guidelines. Yeah. So I agree. I think whether we defer it or whether we just say we can provide feedback by email, I think that's more. When would you need a decision, LaShonda, before it goes to Bach?
So I would need a decision. It wouldn't go to Bach until July. So this is an ongoing thing. Not only are there review level updates, there are also additions for the condominiums that the DRB requested. So,
we could provide feedback. So if we could see this next month, essentially, and say there's no, here are a couple sections that we have some feedback on, and then maybe you make those little minor updates that we talked about with the existing versus as built. And then we could approve to submit for Bach next month.
That's totally fine.
Okay. Yeah. So if everybody could just take a look at them. I know we initially just went through quickly and saw some things. So take some time over the next couple of weeks to dive in here. LaShonda and her team obviously did a lot of work to add all of this. So we just need to make sure that everything looks approvable, and then have any feedback next month for the full board meeting. Okay.
I just have one
Yep.
typo I caught under vegetable gardens. It said vegetable gardens are permitted in front yards. Is that what you meant to say?
that was the intent. They are, as long as they are fenced or they cannot be seen from the street. And I believe that's not in this one. This is in a different design guideline, correct?
Well, it's in this package that you
have. Correct.
But elsewhere in it, it says vegetable gardens need to be in the rear or side yard. So we should look at that.
Oh,
I understand you don't need approval if it's in the rear or side. But staff can approve them in the front yard?
As long as they're not visible from the street and they're screened by fencing.
Okay. All right, thanks. Sorry to sidetrack.
But Elena, that's like a perfect question for feedback, right? So, I think it would be also easy for LaShonda to be able to document our feedback if she has it in writing,
right?
In an email. So,
LaShonda, would you mind sending this out in a fresh email? Just as a reminder, all of us, so then it's not buried in, which meeting was that in? I think that would maybe help us to motivate us a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll definitely do
I
that.
second that motion.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. So we don't need to necessarily make a motion, right, on it? We can just, I'll just make a motion to make sure everyone reviews it and gives feedback by next meeting, by email. And then that way, when we get on the, when we're on board next month, it's not like we're going through this again, line item by line item. We can just go over some of the discrepancies people see, et cetera. And then that way we can make it as efficient and successful as possible.
Yeah, that'll work. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything for tonight? Anybody want to make a motion?
I do. I make a motion, we adjourn.
I hear a motion.
Seconded.
We have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, thanks, staff.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So does this conclude tonight's lighting theme?
Thank you, everybody.
Lights,
Bye.
patios, they're all sidewalks, whatever we want to call them. See you
You
guys.
guys, just so you know, Trevor, the new liaison for the board, was here today. I don't know if you guys
Oh, great. Hi, Trevor. I'm sure you got to see our exciting action tonight. So, all right, guys. I'll see you guys all.
I
next
did.
month.
I appreciate everyone's hard work and thank you for putting in the extra time and hours today. These were not easy situations. You guys handled it very gracefully. So appreciate that. And as you noted, Michael, everyone here everyone on the panel is a volunteer. So I really appreciate the time and the effort because that's not easy. So thank you and have a great night, everyone.
See you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, staff, as always.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.